DND number 10, Circle of Life in Jesus' Name, Part 2, Chapter 5. It's September 12th, Thursday afternoon, Brookside High School, Newport Beach, California. It was one of the first times the Kenos had been out together in public with the new little Kenos since their lives had been so drastically changed. Jason Lee had made the decision to send a few agents along to the volleyball game just to maintain order. He sent Agent Ward, the agent usually assigned to Taylor, and then there was Agent Wyatt. Ricky and Bree arrived early so they could watch the teams warm up. There was definitely a bit of commotion when they walked in. Young Eric was next to arrive and found a seat in the bleachers just in front of his parents. Taylor glanced over and gave a small wave to her family. Jeffy and Cam came in next, causing another stir as people pointed out the doctor who'd won a Nobel Prize and was changing the world. And finally, Eric and Shelley arrived, ushering in their 4 tiny new family members. This spectacle was even a bigger stir than Ricky Keno and Brianna Adams being there. The teams finished their warm-up, and Taylor made a quick dash over to say hi to the little ones who were calling out to her. They were still getting used to the fact that the world was much larger than the daycare center they'd lived in for 2 years. "Tay-Tay!" they yelled as she came to them and hugged them. Just as she finished and turned to run back to her team, a handsome blond boy approached. He was tall and athletic and confident. He walked up and tapped Taylor on the shoulder. She turned. "Lance, hey." "Well, don't act so surprised. I told you I'd be here." She glanced up at her parents. Mom, Dad, this is Lance White. He's the quarterback on the football team." Lance turned to her parents with a smile and extended his hand to Ricky. "Mr. Keno, it's nice to meet you." Ricky nodded. "Lance?" The young man then offered his hand to Bree. "Mrs. Keno, nice to meet you. I told Taylor I'd come to her game if she'd come to mine tomorrow." "Yes, we heard," Bree replied. "We'll see if we can make that happen." "Awesome." "I gotta go," Taylor said. She turned quickly and ran back to her team. Lance smiled up at the Kenos. "And I'm going to go sit over in the student section. It was nice to meet you." They nodded and watched him run off. "So, what do you think about that?" Ricky asked. Bree sighed. "I think it's interesting, I guess." "What do you think?" First impressions. "I think he's confident." "Do you think Gabe is confident?" "Gabe is honest and humble first, but yeah, he's confident." Bree nodded. "I agree." Young Eric leaned over. "Well, I'm a little wary of this guy. I got a strange vibe." "You're just being loyal to Gabe," Bree said. Young Eric nodded. "Maybe. Nothing wrong with that, but I'll try to keep my mind open." He glanced at his phone, then looked toward the gym doors. Ricky smiled. "You a little anxious there, son?" Eric shrugged. "Well, she said she'd probably be late. I just want to catch her as she comes in so I can pay her way." Ricky nodded. "I'll text her and ask her to text me when she gets here," young Eric said. The teams huddled up and gave a cheer and took their positions. Ricky frowned and pointed. "Is that Isla from TeamSpotter.com?" Bree smiled. "Yep. That's Gabe's doing. Apparently, last Saturday he did a video and mentioned something about maybe live streaming one of Taylor's games, and the internet has spoken. She called me and I gave her my blessing. Oh, and by the way, she's gonna want a short interview." Ricky shook his head. "It'll be okay, honey," Bree said. The game started. The Brookside Tigers versus Newport Tridents. Being a libero, Taylor had plenty of opportunity to show out, and she didn't disappoint. The student section was going crazy for her. Young Eric glanced at his phone when it buzzed, and he looked up. "I'll be right back." Jordan just drove up. He left out the gym doors, nodding at Agent Ward as he passed. Outside the gym, he watched her walk up to the outer doors. He rushed forward and opened the door for her and smiled. "Hey." She smiled back. "3." He laughed and took her hand and pressed it between his own. "We're only about 10 minutes into the first set." He paid the lady at the table and ushered Jordan toward the gym. She looked quite a bit different than the first time he'd seen her. No little black dress this time. She wore jeans and a pretty little jade-colored, textured sweater-type deal, edged with lace, and darker green slouch boots. He had to admire her tall, trim, athletic body. Her blonde hair fell around her face and over her shoulders, looking windblown. She was stunning. You look beautiful, he said. She smiled. Thanks. You don't look half bad yourself, she quipped. She looked him over. He was definitely dressed down compared to how he'd been. Blue jeans, athletic shoes, and a navy blue knit shirt that definitely showed off his muscular physique. His gorgeous smile radiated, and his dark hair fell over onto his forehead. He was ruggedly handsome. It's nice to see you again, he said as he opened the gym door and ushered her to sit just in front of his parents. Before she sat down, she turned and greeted them, and then Jeffy and Cam, and then waved at the elder Kinos, who sat just to the left of young Eric's parents. She smiled at the four little ones sitting in front of them. Jordan turned and immediately looked for the score, and then for Taylor. The score currently was 16-8 Brookside. Taylor dug a brutal serve. Yeah, good job, Taylor, Jordan yelled. Young Eric smiled. What, 3? Don't you guys yell for your team? He laughed. Yeah, we do. I'm just glad to see that you're not shy. She laughed. Not even a little bit. Then you and my sister have a lot in common. Brookside won the next 3 points, then lost the serve, making the score 19-9. They lost the next 4 points and then won it back, and it was Taylor's serve. Score 20-13. Come on, Tay, Ricky called. Bring us home, baby. She aced the first serve. The whole gym was oohing over her tremendous serve. Say yay, Tay-Tay, Shelley directed the children. They started yelling and screaming at the top of their lungs. Oh, Lord. Come on, baby girl, Bree muttered. Jordan turned and smiled up at her. My mom is the same way when I'm playing. She gets so nervous she can barely watch. Let's go, Tay, young Eric called. She served again. Another ace. Yes, the Keno men all said fiercely. She served again, and the other team returned, but Taylor dove to save the hit, and Charlotte and Jana killed it, 23-13. The other team called a timeout to try to ice Taylor. Don't get in your head, young Eric yelled. Taylor smiled and tapped her temple, showing that she had this, and sure enough, she did. She fired in 2 more serves that the other team just could not handle. Brookside won, 25-13. The student body was going crazy, and Ricky watched Lance, the QB, as he and a few other guys stood and cheered for the girls, calling their names and heaping praise on them. The second set of the game went almost the same way, and Brookside won the first game. Now the Tridents would have to play team number 3, the Bayside Bulldogs, while Brookside got to watch. 3, your sister is awesome, Jordan said. She's an athlete. Young Eric nodded. Yes, she is. Rick, the elder Keno said softly. Ricky turned immediately. Sir? How about grabbing a couple of these guys for me and we'll head to the restroom? Ricky stood. Sure. Let me see. Who should I grab? Me, all 3 boys yelled and stood, jumping up and down. Ricky frowned. I'm pretty sure that's not how it works, is it? The 3 all quickly sat and got very still. Ricky scooped up Manny, whom he knew was having a bit of trouble adjusting to his new life and needed some extra attention. He shifted Manny over to his right arm and scooped up Abraham in his left and stepped over the few seats to the floor. Eric stood and lifted Noah carefully and stepped down to the floor. They headed out to the restroom. Bree turned to Shelley. How's Eric doing, Mom? Oh, he's getting stronger every day. It's like his healing is accelerated. We are so blessed. Bree nodded. And how are you holding up? Shelley nodded. I'm fine. Not sure why everyone seems so concerned about me. I'm healthy and fit and perfectly capable of taking care of my children. Bree's brow furrowed. Did someone say you weren't? Shelley sighed. Well, not in so many words. Well, I know you're capable, but if it was me who suddenly had 4 little ones to take care of, I'd be tearing my hair out. I'd definitely hire on some help. Jordan turned and smiled at the 2 ladies. Really? I mean, even very young mothers who have just say like twins, they have a hard time. I'm in awe of you, Mrs. Keno. Shelley smiled. Thank you, Jordan. I agree, Jeffy said as she stood to stretch her legs. I'm worried about how I'm going to handle one, and here you are, Mom, handling quads like a pro. I gotta go, Angelina said. I'll take her, Jordan volunteered. Shelley nodded. Jordan lifted the small girl and stepped over 2 seats to get to the floor. I think I'll go too, Jeffy said. Cam rose and took her arm to help her down. Not that she needed help, but she was 6 months pregnant, and in Cam's mind was looking very delicate. But Jeffy suddenly gasped, and she turned her head around, trying to look behind her. "What is it, baby?" Cam asked. "I felt something," she said, her eyes scanning the bleachers and then turning to scan the people walking back and forth past the bleachers. She looked at her father, who was looking at her. "I'll tell you later." Cam finished helping her down. There was a roar coming from the student section, and Bree looked over to see Isla and her cameraman getting live interviews from the kids. She definitely knew what she was doing. Young Eric watched Jordan carrying his little aunt. Jordan already fit in as if she was part of the family. He liked what he was seeing, in more ways than one, he thought, as the girls left the gym. "Nice view, huh?" Cam said. Eric looked up at his uncle by marriage and smiled. "Definitely." "What was that name I heard her call you? Tree?" Eric grinned. "3. 'Cause I'm a third. She alternates between that and Trip, which stands for triple ones." Cam nodded. "I like this girl." Young Eric chuckled. "Yep, me too. And the cool thing is, she doesn't seem to be impressed by the Keno thing, you know?" "I get it. So, Uncle Cam, what about you? I mean, when you first met Jeffy, did the fact that she was a Keno play into your decision to stay with her?" Cam laughed. "Well, when I first met her, I didn't know she was a Keno. I learned pretty fast, though, and if it did anything, it made me afraid to go near her." Shelley and Bree laughed at his words. "Yeah, Eric, your grandfather didn't make it easy on Cam at all," Shelley said. "And neither did your father, or your Uncle Joey, or Uncle Mark," Bree said. "Yeah, and don't forget Jeff," Cam added. "I think he saw himself as Jeffy's personal bodyguard, and I was threatened by all of them. Like, threatened with physical harm." Young Eric made a face. "Harsh. I was only a little kid back then." Cam nodded. "So, anyway, it's different when the Keno is a guy, and she doesn't seem to be after fame or fortune." "Yeah, but her thing is she doesn't trust people in the limelight. I tried to tell her that's my parents, not me. Except you're about to be very much in the limelight." Eric sighed. "Well, hopefully not as the first Keno to lose a challenge." Cam shook his head. "Full disclosure, 3. Cam emphasized with a grin. "Whatever you say to me that I think affects your ability to win gets reported to Grandmaster Keno." "Man, again, harsh. It's all for a good cause, and you'll thank me later." "So, when are you going to represent?" "Oh, probably never." "Probably never. When I fight, it's to kill, usually, and I always win, so it's too hard to switch that on and off, and could be dangerous to other people, or to me." Young Eric nodded. "I can see that. You're an asset. Let's not load a .22 caliber bullet into a .44 Magnum Smith & Wesson." Cam stood to help Jeffy back up into her seat. "I like that. You can call me 44 if you'd like." Eric laughed and stood to lift little Angelina up to his grandmother. He grabbed her around the waist. "Are you ready to fly?" "Fly," she said. He lifted her high over his head and zoomed her around before coming to land on Shelley's lap. "Wow," Jordan said. "I want to fly too." Before she could protest, Eric put his hands on her hips and lifted her high in the air, and she squealed as she went up. It looked like the lift in Dirty Dancing, and it got the attention of the crowd at the gym. She didn't hold her body stiff enough, though, and crumpled down against him. But he didn't let her fall, to his credit. He set her down to a large ovation. Just a few seconds later, Eric and Ricky came back with the boys and an armful of concessions, popcorn and cups of water. Ricky smiled up at his son. "Putting on a show, son?" "I didn't mean to. I was just playing around." Ricky pointed at Isla and her cameraman, who were walking toward them. "Well, it's going to trend, I guarantee." "Darn." "Hello, Keno family," Isla said brightly. She turned for the camera. "Okay, the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's talk to one of America's favorite families. Grandmaster Keno, we all prayed so hard for you, and now here you are, a living, breathing miracle." Eric nodded. "Indeed, God is good all the time." "Mrs. Keno, how do you feel?" Isla held the microphone toward Shelley. "I'm grateful every minute of the day and night." And busy, I imagine, with these beautiful new children. It's quite a story, and I'm hoping we can sit down one day soon and do an interview to hear the whole story instead of the bits and pieces we've heard. Shelley nodded. Because I know you've been honest in your interviews and your editing process, I believe we can probably make that happen. Of course, my husband will also be a part of that interview. Isla nodded excitedly. Oh, that would be wonderful. She glanced at the children. May I ask them their names? Shelley glanced up at Eric, and he nodded. Isla spoke into the mic and looked at little Noah first because he was giving her eye contact. Can you tell me your name? She put the mic toward him. He smiled, leaned toward the microphone. I'm Noah Kino, he said proudly. And how about you? Isla put the mic up to Abraham's lips. I, Abraham Kino, he said softly, and then smiled up at his mother, who patted him on the head. She did the same for Manny, who was a little shyer, but he got the words out. And finally, Isla asked for Angelina's name and pointed the mic at her. I'm Angelina Kino, but Mommy calls me her little angel. And this is my real Mommy, she patted Shelley's cheek. And that's my real Daddy, she said, pointing at Eric. And we saw him get shot, but God made him better. And we love him, and we love our Mommy, and we love everyone in our family, and everyone in the whole world, even the bad guys, because Jesus says to love the bad people too. Wow, Isla said with a laugh. You are a very smart little girl. She smiled cutely. I know. And Mommy says I'm not shy at all. And Daddy says that I remind him of Jeffy. She pointed at Jeffy. That's Jeffy. She's my sister, and she's going to have a baby soon, and I can't wait. Isla moved down to speak with Jeffy and her husband, since that was how Little Angel directed it. And after speaking a few minutes with Jeffy and Cam Wallace, she turned her attention to Ricky and Bree, who, being pros, gave her some warm family insights and spoke about Taylor, since that's whose game they were at, which brought Isla to ask about Gabe. He's doing well, Bree assured her, but whatever questions you have about him personally, you'll have to ask him. Isla smiled brightly. Oh, I can assure you I will. And since I know he's watching this live stream, do you hear that, Gabriel Tanner? I'm going to be asking some personal questions soon. Bree watched her phone a moment and smiled at his very kind response in the comments. I'm looking forward to it. And here's a member of the family that we don't often get to see or speak with. Hello, Eric Kino III. Young Eric looked up at the cameraman and then at Isla and smiled. Hi. So tell me, Eric, are you shy or do you just try to keep a low profile? He grinned. Well, I'm definitely not shy, and I can run my mouth with the best of them, but I've learned to let my actions speak for me. Behind him, Ricky glowed with pride. But as I hear it, you're not going to be able to keep a low profile soon because you're going to be fighting in the next Keno Challenge this November. Yes, and again, I'll let my actions speak for me. Jordan chuckled, making Isla zero in on her. She smiled at her. And hello. Are you a member of the family that I've never had the opportunity to meet? Eric took over. Isla, this is Jordan. She's a good friend. A friend? Oh, I see. Young Eric rolled his eyes. She must be a very good friend to be here with the family watching Taylor. Well, she's quite an athlete herself, and so was interested in seeing Taylor play. Oh, another athlete. Do you also play volleyball? Jordan shook her head. Well, I did when I was in high school, but my thing is softball. I pitched for UCLA. Oh, wow, a college athlete. You wouldn't happen to still be a teenager, would you? I'm 19. Why? Because at teenspotter.com, we love to travel around and video exceptional teens doing their thing. Well, I'm not exceptional. Yes, she is. Exceptional enough to get a full ride softball scholarship to UCLA as a pitcher, Eric put in quickly. Jordan shot him a look. Isla turned to the camera. Hey, everyone. Drop a comment and let me know if you'd like to see me or one of my associates cover one of Jordan's games. She turned back. We're growing and actually have a sports guy and a music girl because I can't be in so many places at once. And I'm also busy because I have a new spot on the national news, too. All thanks to you-know-who, our beloved own Gabe Tanner. She turned and looked over her shoulder. Hey, looks like this game is about over, which means the Brookside Tigers are about to play again. Woohoo, let's go, Taylor. She smiled at the Kenos. Well, we're going to go get him back. We're going to go get back in place to video the action. Keno family, you totally rock. Thank you so much for taking time to speak to our viewers. She turned back to the camera. Don't forget to smash that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe. And if you'd like to hear from the Keynotes again, like maybe at the Keynote Challenge, drop a comment. She turned back. Thanks again, guys. You honor me. She stood back a little and bowed. Jordan was surprised to see the Keno family all rise and bow. She smiled. This family was pretty special. She looked up at Eric as he sat back down. Well, that was cool. She's a good lady, a little pushy sometimes, but honest, and she does her job with integrity. She also has a lot of power and pull, so it's a good thing she's on the side of light. Why do you say she has power and pull? I mean, she's just a social media person, right? Well, that's how she began, and though she's been offered a spot on national news, she keeps up her social media presence because she knows on her own social media channels that she has the power to keep it honest. The cool thing is, her goal is not to get famous or get on TV. Her goal is to reach as many people as possible with positive messages. The teens she covers all across the country are inspirational. From great athletes, amazing performers, community workers, young business leaders, young speakers, smart kids. She covers them and presents them and then listens to her audience. She reads the comments, well, not all of them, because she has millions of viewers and hundreds of thousands of comments. Anyway, she has a lot of power because if she takes an interest in someone and her audience likes them, they become an instant star. Jordan nodded, like Gabe Tanner. Exactly. And Gabe is a truly good guy who just wants to do good in the world. So it's perfect that Gabe brought him and Isla. So it's perfect that God brought him and Isla together. So you think God is working through a social media influencer? Eric smiled. He works in many ways we might not understand. In small town preachers, in homeless people, in the average person on the street, and yes, he's blessed Isla to bring his light to millions. And when she started a prayer chain for Gabe back last April when he'd been abducted, God blessed her with his Holy Spirit, and many who prayed for Gabe wrote comments or their own vlogs about God moving in their lives. It was amazing. Interesting, she said, and then nodded at the court. Here we go. Come on, Tigers, let's do this, she yelled. She gave a loud whistle. Young Eric looked at her with a grin. This girl just gets better and better. New scene. It's still September 12th, Thursday evening, Tanner home, Pine Forest, Georgia. The den was packed full of people. Gabe's entire family was there, except for Heather and Nolan, who'd gone back to Tennessee. Jake, Lena, and John Apple were there. Jody couldn't make it because she had to cover for a sick employee. The Stewarts were there, although Lisa had joined Lizzie in the kitchen, both of them sipping herbal tea. They were airplaying the live stream up onto their large screen TV, and Gabe couldn't take his eyes from the screen. Like a possessive parent, he was so proud of Taylor he could burst. First, she was adorable in the team uniform, especially those little black shorts that showed off her muscular thighs. Her gorgeous body compensated for the somewhat ugly orange jerseys. Her long, thick hair was up in a braided ponytail. She was into it, scowling, cheering, clapping, slapping hands with her teammates after every point, won or lost. Her skills had improved immensely. Her serve was freaking impressive, and she gave her all and sacrificed her body to go after the balls that looked impossible for her to get to. How he wished he were there. The moment the game ended, he would lift her up, spin her around, and kiss her right there. Lord, he missed her. They were about to win their second game. The first they'd won, winning both sets. This second game was against a much better team. Brookside won the first set 25-21. The second set they lost 26-24. Taylor did great that first set. The second set she botched a couple of her serves and messed up a few returns, but still did well overall. Now they were in the tiebreaker, which only goes to 15 instead of 25, and the score was 13-9 Tigers, and it was Taylor's serve, and the whole room held their breath. Gabe paced back and forth behind the sofa, stopped as she tossed the ball up, Watched as she slammed it over the net. It was a powerful serve, but the other team dove and got it. They set and spiked the ball. Taylor dove and got it. Charla set and Janice slammed it hard. Point one, 14-9. The other team called a timeout. Gabriel started pacing again. Come on, baby, he said softly. You can do this. The camera turned to show the Kinos in the stands. Gabe smiled at their faces. The win was in Taylor's hands, and they all knew it. And Gabe also smiled, seeing that young Eric's new friend was there beside him. That was cool. Timeout over, the camera swung back to Taylor as she went back to serve again. She bounced the ball several times, ran, tossed it up, and slammed it. The ball streaked, just barely clearing the net. The girl on the other team dove for it, but the ball was hit so hard, once she made contact, it went out of bounds and almost to the ceiling. Point, set, game, Brookside wins. Everyone in the Tanner living room jumped up and cheered. They watched as Taylor's team group hugged each other and then lined up and hit hands with the other team. Once that was finished, the girls all huddled again and cheered, and people came running from out of the stands. Everyone watched as a handsome, blonde kid ran toward Taylor, lifted her up, and spun her around. He set her down and leaned close to her, talking in her ear, and Taylor laughed. The people in the Tanner den got quiet, everyone glancing over at Gabe. He blinked up at the screen, his lips pressed tightly together. He told her to have fun, to do things with other people while he was gone. So why did he feel like his heart was going to break? He drew a deep breath, shook it off, and looked around. Most everyone had been looking at him and glanced away quickly, and he smiled. It's okay, guys. I told her to have fun and to go out with classmates and stuff. That's all it is. So a guy hugged her. No big deal. Jake nodded. That's right, Gabesters, no big deal. I mean, look, he pointed at the screen. She's being hugged by a different guy now, and now by a girl, and there's her family. No big deal. You just miss her, that's all. Gabe nodded. Truth. Who's hungry for some pizza? It'll be here any minute. Keegan watched his son from across the room. He really hoped it was no big deal because Gabe was totally in love with Taylor. They'd all known she was young, him too, and there was a possibility that they could move on. Still, Keegan sincerely hoped that they would be able to make it through this testing period intact. Gabe had been through so much this past year. A broken heart heaped on top would not be fun. He watched as Gabe pulled out his phone and looked down and sent a text. He really hoped Taylor would respond quickly. Back on the screen, everyone watched as Taylor's family surrounded her and then quieted as Isla August made her way to interview her. Taylor Keno, hello. It's so nice to see you again. Now, that was a great game. Taylor smiled brightly. Hey, Isla. Thanks. My teammates are awesome, aren't they? Isla nodded. And you were awesome. Of course, it doesn't surprise me, since the Kenos always reach for excellence. I don't know that much about volleyball, but I'm told that your serve is phenomenal. Taylor smiled. Well, I work hard at it so that I can offer something of value to the team, since I'm so much shorter than everyone. As Taylor introduced Isla to a few members of her team, everyone noticed the cute guy who came up behind her and placed his hands on her shoulders. It was the same blonde-haired guy from earlier. Everyone noticed. Everyone standing around Taylor and everyone in the Tanner den. Gabe immediately looked for Ricky to see his expression. It wasn't anger, but Gabe could tell he wasn't pleased, and that Ricky wasn't actually pleased Gabe. And who do we have here? Isla asked quickly, always the pro, and knowing that there could be a drama unfolding. Taylor turned to look at him. This is one of my fellow classmates. When that was all Taylor offered, the boy smiled charmingly. I'm Lance White. I'm a senior. I'm here at Taylor's volleyball game because we made a deal. Oh, really? What deal was that? Isla asked. I promised to come to her volleyball game if she comes to see me play football tomorrow night. Taylor smiled sweetly. I made no such promise. Hush, Bubbity. Hush now. There's nobody out there. Okay. Taylor smiled sweetly. I made no such promise. Gabe watched, his senses alert. Taylor's dad reached up and removed the guy's hands from Taylor's shoulders. So, you're a football player, Isla exclaimed. How nice. He grinned. Yep, I'm the quarterback. Come on out to the game. It'll be a good one. We're undefeated so far. Well, as tempting as that sounds, I have another appointment tomorrow night. But hey, if my audience wants to see it, they'll certainly let me know. Maybe we can send someone. Cool. And remember, Taylor's going to be there, so you can sit with her. I haven't said I would be there, Taylor put in quickly, glancing at her father, who up to that moment had been doing a good job of controlling himself. Suddenly, Ricky smiled, put his arm around the shoulders of the young man, and ushered him away. Gabe watched as Lance tried to pull away but was unable. Yeah, good luck, Gabe thought. What are your thoughts, Gabe? Keegan asked. Well, the kid in me wants to kick the guy's butt. The trying to be mature guy in me thinks that Lance dude is cocky and wants to use Taylor for some instant fame. Keegan nodded. So, your plan of action? Gabe shrugged. Speak to Taylor if she ever calls me back and warn her off. Jake laughed. Yeah, even I know that would be the worst thing you could do. Yep, I'm with Jake on that, Lena put in. Why? Gabe asked. 'Cause she'll think you're just jealous and she'll rebel and spend more time with him. Taylor isn't like that. Jake nodded. Okay, go with your plan and we'll see. He looked around. Anyone want to bet? John Apple shook his head. Never bet on matters of the heart. The live stream ended and the pizza arrived, and Gabe hoped he'd get that phone call soon. And once Taylor got back to the locker room and saw his text on her phone, she'll call him, he thought. New scene. Still September 12th, Thursday evening, back to Brookside High School, Newport, California. Let's go have a little chat, Ricky Kino said softly to the boy. Lance tried to pull away, but was no match for Ricky. Did I do something wrong? The kid asked. Not in a humble way, but in a challenging way. Ricky sighed. Several things, but we're not going to address those. Look, I don't know your agenda. I don't know your motives, but I think you need to know something about our family. We don't broadcast where a member of our family will be at any given time. Not ever. We never tell anyone and certainly don't announce it on social media that we will for sure be at this place or that place. So first, I know that Taylor didn't promise you she would be there. And now, more than likely, she won't. Why? Ricky shook his head. Well, this year alone, there's been 2 abduction attempts on my daughter. I get it, but like, for example, everyone knows you guys are going to be at the Keno Challenge in November. Ricky nodded with a heavy security detail. Wow, that's a sucky way to have to live. Yep, there is darkness in this world and we have to be awake and aware. So like, I would give anything to be famous. Would you rather not be famous? Ricky shook his head. It doesn't matter what I'd rather be. It is what it is. We do God's will, and we fight the darkness and stand up and do what's right. Lance made a slight face. So you're not going to let Taylor come to my game tomorrow? I'm going to say no right now, but who knows? She may show. Lance nodded his head in understanding. And that is the end of chapter 5.